If I were to say to you, wooden teeth, a cherry tree, and Valley Forge, what name would come to your mind?
George Washington.
George Washington, good. Well, if the first two didn't get you, then surely the Valley Forge did. I want to take a few minutes tonight, and I want us to remember probably one of, if not the greatest Americans that's ever lived. George Washington was instrumental in the founding of our country, and he's a man that deserves to be remembered with great honor. And in the next few moments, I want to share with us just two of the traits that made George Washington a great American, and even more so, a great man. And those are the fact that he was both a man of freedom and a man of faith. I want to start, first of all, by remembering tonight that he was a man of freedom. He fought as a British officer in the expansion of the colonies. When he kind of grew tired of that, realized that he wasn't going to get the promotion that he really wanted, he resigned his commission, but he continued to serve as a volunteer. He served under General Braddock. When General Braddock died, the news of his heroism had spread so much back to the British Crown that they offered him the position of colonel and commander of the Virginia Regiment. So they reinstated him, and he once again took up an official officer's position commanding the Virginia Regiment. He also then, once he realized that he could no longer support the crown and realized he needed to support the colonies and the will of the people there, he took a commission as an officer in the Revolutionary War, and he fought in two of the most notable battles of the war. He fought at Lexington and at Concord. He attended all of the constitutional conventions. Now this is important. The most important being that he attended in 1787 at the last Constitutional Convention, when the nation was operating under the Articles of Confederation. James Madison wanted to bring representatives together to look at putting in place a republic and a constitutional form of government. The people wouldn't have anything of it until they heard that George Washington was going to attend. When they heard that George Washington would be in attendance, they agreed to hold a convention. If George Washington had not agreed to go, there may very well have been no convention, and the American Republic might never have been formed. But because he believed in the truths of liberty and freedom and justice, he fought as a British officer, as an American officer in the Revolutionary War, and he served also in the Constitutional Convention as a voted-on delegate from the great state of Virginia. But the most important thing about George Washington was he was a man of faith. The faith of George Washington has come under fire in recent years. There are a lot of people who don't think we ought to celebrate him as a great man, as a great president, as a great leader. Well, that makes sense given the fact that today so many people don't recognize America's Christian heritage, and George Washington was a very strong Christian man. We can be certain of the faith of George Washington. When George Washington, in his own words, wrote hundreds of prayers by his own hand, Peter Lilback in his book, Sacred Fire, details the faith of George Washington. And he notes for us the fact that one day George Washington made this statement to a clergyman: "No man has a more perfect reliance on the all-wise and powerful dispensations of the Supreme Being than I have, nor thinks his aid more necessary." In other words, George Washington said, there's nobody who believes any stronger than I that we need God to govern in the affairs of men. In fact, it was George Washington who said, it is impossible to rightly govern without God and without the Bible. Many of us are familiar with his prayer at Valley Forge, which gives strong evidence of his belief in a sovereign God. We know how on numerous occasions his men would find him kneeling in the snow in prayer, not just at Valley Forge, but he would seek the will of God. He repeatedly stated his belief that America could only survive as a Christian nation. And in his farewell address, he gives strong evidence of his belief that America could only survive under the providence of God. See, today George Washington is thrown in with all the other presidents. We don't celebrate his birthday like we used to. We have President's Day, which means we celebrate George Washington along with lesser men who've risen to that office. But the simple truth is, we can look back on George Washington and recognize the fact that if he had not been a man who walked with God, and if he had not been a man willing to fight for the freedoms that he believed in, it's quite possible that America would not be the nation that it is today. So I want to say to us tonight, when we think about the history of men that have led this country, and when we think about the presidents, let us remember that George Washington, one of the greatest men who ever lived, was a man of freedom, and he was a man of faith. Let us remember him well, and may he not be lost amidst the number of lesser men who rose to be President of the United States. Thank you again so much.